Yeah, I don't hear myself. Maybe I'm listening to the wrong headphones.
Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Today we have someone who's making New Haven tick. Their name is Rosa Pepper-Macias. Did I say the last one right?
It's Macias.
Macias, sorry about that. Rosa Pepper-Macias, who's the candidate in the State Senate District 11 from the Workers' Voice Party. Rosa's going to tell us about the campaign and what the party's all about. And they're taking on Al Paolillo Jr., who's seeking to move up from state rep on the east side to state senator to replace the retiring state senator Martin Looney, who's been there for a long time. Rosa, welcome to Dateline. It's so nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you as well.
It was so fun to read about you in the Independent Liz Grace's recipe. You started your campaign in the media sharing a recipe growing up in California. That was good. Did that kind of blow your mind a little bit, like your first media interview?
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of apt for a line cook running for office to do a recipe. I mean, it was such a coincidence when we ran into her. She was, very sweet, and it was like, oh my God, this is such a happenstance meeting because I actually report on recipes. I was like, okay, perfect. And so I think it worked out really well.
And you are a line cook, you told me, at the Omni.
Yes, I am.
And I remember the big fights over unionizing that hotel when they built it downtown. That was one of the conditions of letting them build the hotels.
Yeah, I remember when they were out on strike in 2024, and I went by, and all my coworkers, now all my coworkers, I wasn't a worker there at the time, were out on strike, and it was like just so inspiring for me. I immediately knew. I was like, I want to be a part of that team. Like, they look so awesome. They look so unified. It's so exciting.
What is it like to be a unionized line cook? Have you been a non-unionized line cook in your life? Is this different?
Yeah, I mean, I started in the restaurant industry when I was very young. I was still in high school, and I worked at many mom and pop shops throughout COVID, all that kind of stuff, and just saw the sort of.
Did you get COVID having to work out in the early on?
Yes, I think I did. I did get COVID when I was working in high school.
And was it okay because you were a kid? You had like better metabolism, all that.
I don't know. I definitely had to take off work, which sucked. That was a big deal. But I mean, so many restaurant workers were put in really big danger throughout the entire pandemic, and it was just such a clear example of the ways in which the food service industry is exploitative and takes advantage of what was absolutely mainly immigrant labor.
And you're partly talking about health conditions. You're also talking about like just-in-time assigning of hours. You don't know in advance what hours you're going to work and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and so at my job, it's there's a schedule of when the bosses are allowed to put out the schedule, and we have a very clear way of fighting it when they do things that undermine our ability to do our jobs.
And is it arbitrary who gets how many hours every week, or is there some kind of process?
It's based on seniority, which is it's like the first time I've ever worked at a shop that has anything based on seniority. And when I was new, it was strange, but now it sort of like makes perfect sense to me, and it I think it's such a better system. Because,
and you get health care?
Yeah.
So do you get a minimum number of hours every week?
When you're full time, yes. I had to drop down off of full time this year, but. And
a line cook, what does a line cook do every day when you go to the Omni?
So I work the saute station. So I do all of like the fish, I do the shrimp, I do the clam linguine, all of that kind of stuff.
Is that fun?
And well, I mean, it's work. It's good work. It's what I've always done. I'm skilled at it. So
do you get sick of the food after the first week?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Are you allowed to get a meal out of it?
Well, we actually have a cafeteria, which is something that our union fought for. And so we have all of this wonderful food that our that we have like a special worker whose job it is to make that family meal every day, and it's good.
And do you take pride in the work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what I really take pride in is the fact that like I have a really great relationship with a lot of my coworkers. I really, really appreciate my coworkers and all the conversations that we have and our ability to get together and organize and all that kind of stuff.
And you said you started at 16. How'd you get started as a line cook?
I walked up to a restaurant in my hometown and asked for a job, and I had no skills at all. And I think I started sort of doing front of the house and just like prep prep cook jobs. Like.
And how'd you
picking
learn?
mint.
How'd you learn how to be a good cook?
And I had a head chef who was really demanding, and he had come from fine dining and all these kinds of things. And he was.
Was it a fine dining place?
No, it was a sister restaurant of a very fancy restaurant, but it was bar food, Indonesian fusion. So it was
Indonesian fusion.
Yeah.
And where was this?
This is in Southern California. I'm originally
what
from
town?
I'm originally from Ojai, California. So
Ojai?
yeah.
OHI?
OJAI.
OJ, sorry.
Yeah.
And so this person sort of a grumpy mentor, like at a sitcom? Like, get out of here, kid, and this is how you sprinkle the salt so it kind of tastes just right. Yeah.
No, he was a younger guy who had really intense OCD.
Oh, okay.
So he was just very like intricate. But what was wonderful was that, we had a great team, and it was, an Indonesian fusion restaurant. So of course all the cooks were Mexicans. So we had an absolute, it was just always so much fun with the music and the vibes in the kitchen. And when it was cleaning time.
That sounds like a nice memory.
Yeah. When it was cleaning time, it was like a blast. Everyone just singing and talking and all that kind of stuff. It was a great experience. And I knew from then on, like, I learned more in my first 2 months working in kitchens than I ever did in high school. So it was like, okay, this is what I want to do.
So you were also going to school. Was it a lot of work tiring, or was the school not demanding? Or
no, I mean, I cared about high school when I was in high school. I cared about college when I was in college. But once I started to get political, I really wanted to focus on that. I found myself learning a lot more in the arena of politics because, there was just so many struggles and things to keep
So you grew
excited.
up, what kind of town was it that you grew up in?
I describe it as like a rural town. There was nothing to do downtown for the kids, so we would just go off into, find places in the woods to have, to get up to no good. It was a blast. Yeah. But
And you grew up with two dads?
Yeah.
And did that at all mark in the town? Was it a tolerant town? What was it?
Yeah, it was a pretty tolerant town. I mean, one part of the reason that my parents were excited about living there was because of that. They had, part of their gay community had gone up and sort of moved out of LA in the early 2000s. And so they were sort of joining a community. And so I was in a pretty big way raised by like a whole group of, of people who were sort of fleeing Los Angeles that had been, all of the neighborhoods that they had been a part of and stuff like that had been completely gentrified and all these kinds of things. And they're all full of McMansions now. And so, part of the reason that my parents were excited about living in this town was because sort of this community had coalesced there.
And they had politically conscious parents. What they do?
They had what?
You had politically conscious parents? Like, were you thinking about politics at an early age? Were they involved? They take you to demonstrations? What kind of stuff they do?
Yeah, they were very involved in a lot of like the LGBTQ advocacy stuff in California. So like when Prop 8 fell, they were very involved with that, which was like for gay marriage in California. So those were like the big stories of my childhood, was thinking about queer liberation in that regard. But pretty early on, after I came out as trans, I had a conversation with my dad where...
How old were you?
I was 21. I had a conversation with my dad in which he basically said, like, we've fought this fight for our whole lives, and we haven't built a world in which we can guarantee your safety. And our strategy was, we tried our best, but we failed.
And there are tensions in the gay community, right? From sort of like second wave feminist or old line gays, sometimes trans, feel a threat by it in some corners of the gay community, LGBT. Generational, I'm thinking.
I think that when it comes down to it, gay and queer people are really easy to have the it's really easy for them to have a conversation that changes their mind about these things. But it's just as like with every community, a lot of times it takes knowing somebody personally and interacting with them and fighting alongside them in all these sorts of struggles to open your mind and actually open the door for...
And was immigration an issue when you were growing up in terms of political consciousness? Did your family at all immigrant roots? Or?
Well, I'm originally from LA. I grew up in LA, and I remember seeing friends and family and people that were around growing up being harassed and taken and all of these things by ICE. I mean, I grew up in the Obama years, so it was like, that was the middle of a huge upsurge, and people don't often think of that. And so, when people speak about Obama and, oh, we should just go back to the Obama years, it's pretty horrifying to me because, I lived through that stuff and am, horrified at the ways in which that regime attacked people who, look just like me and who have, who were like members of my community growing up in California. So, that doesn't seem like something I want to go back to. I want to go back to, or I don't want to go back to anything. I want to push forward for a world in which people have equal rights and aren't being attacked by a state that, is incredibly violent.
And we're talking to Rosa Pepper-Macias, did I say it right?
Yeah.
Who's trying to bring about that change as a candidate for the State Senate District 11 seat from the Workers' Voice Party. So I'm kind of interested in how your story of how you came here and everything. So where'd you go to college?
I went to Wesleyan University.
So that got you the East Coast. So that's how you got here.
That's how I got out here, and I, started coming around Workers' Voice events. I went to.
I never heard of Workers' Voice. They've been around here. I know they're in Boston, right?
Yeah. Well, no, we're all around. We're a national organization. So we're all around. But yeah, I mean, I was living in East Haven with some family friends at the time, and I just was riding my bike around town, and I saw a poster, and I was interested in getting more into leftist politics.
After you're out of college, or while still there?
No, I was actually still in college.
Living in East Haven.
Yeah.
So that's a commute.
That was during the summer. Yeah. But so I was living in East Haven with some family friends over the summer, and went to
Middletown was kind of a fun place to live, right? Culturally.
Mm-hmm. I went to a bunch of different events for different political parties, and had like a sampling of everything, and got a taste of Workers' Voice at a meeting about fighting back against pinkwashing, which is like when corporations pretend to be pro-queer or pro-woman, and then are actually just super exploitative to those communities and are trying to just like market the fact that they're use queer things as marketing. And it was a talk about that and about how to fight back against it, and about, the incredible force that unions can present in fighting back against that. When you have companies that make their profits in the war machine, and off murdering people, and queer people for that matter, overseas, sponsoring things like pride parades, that's, a real problem. So we would advocate that the unions that represent the workers at those companies show up to the pride parades, and that's exactly what they've done here in Connecticut.
I'm going to take your photo if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So were you working as a line cook throughout college or post-college? Like, tell me.
I did work in a restaurant when I was in college, but I was focusing mostly on my studies and participating in all of the, I was one of the members of a group called the Young Socialists at my college. I participated in the Palestine Solidarity Movement. I participated in, all sorts of organizations and things like that, especially like a defense coalition that was talking about defending, our civil liberties and our rights, that sparked up in the aftermath of the ICE seizure or disappearance of Mahmoud Khalil. And so, a lot of those things took up a lot of my time. So
when you're done with college, you're kind of feeling like politics is game one, and then just get some line cook jobs to keep the bills paid.
Yeah, and I mean, I really did move to New Haven because I was excited about hanging around, and being a part of this city, and it's a great city, and I got a great job here, and I was like, this is, absolutely perfect.
And now you decide, so how to come about that you decided you're going to run for state senate, and why state senate?
Well, we live in the context of an upsurge in the federal or in the government's repression of independent voices, from the left to like immigrants to the trans community and the Black community. Their attacks are increasing. So we were discussing this, and we wanted to make sure that we were running a candidate to show that we have a democratic right to participate in these elections.
But why that office? Like, why not, let's say, Congress, if you wanted to bring up more federal issues?
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I'm at this point not old enough. Yeah. So you have to be 25 to run for for the House of Representatives. So I would have loved to take on Rosa DeLauro because I think that would be hilarious, Rosa v. Rosa. But unfortunately, I didn't have it in me this year. But
so you live in the district. What part of the district do you live in? What part of the district do you live in?
I live downtown. So I live...
And that's covered in District 11?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, that's right, because there are only 2 state senate districts. So what's it been like? Are you guys... And I noticed you got 850 signatures. I mean, you got 964 signatures in 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
How many people did you have gathering all that? That's a lot of work.
Gathering that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had a huge big teams go out, like 20 plus people on some days, and then some days it was, a few of us, I would meet somebody at the doors and we would talk about it and want to go out, and they'd come canvassing with us. That's how
So did you get certified, or are you waiting to be certified?
So we're supposed to hear back from the state tomorrow. So it's very exciting. We're about to be certified. We fully expect to be certified.
How many did you need?
We needed 300 something.
Oh, so you got triple that. Good job. So
we almost tripled. I think we did triple it.
And so far, like when you got some reviewed by the New Haven clerk, what rate was it going at that they were approved?
I forget exactly the percentage, but we had 246, the town clerk told us, certified. Out of, I think it was at that time like 400 something.
So you got more than half. So that means you're on a good path.
Yeah, we were, we're fully expecting. We're fully expecting to blow right past that number.
All right.
So we're very grateful that we had so many wonderful people out there canvassing for us, and it was it's really exciting. We got the opportunity to bring folks up and talk about politics, right? When we go door to door, we're not asking for just to have a short conversation and move along on our way. We actually sit and talk to people about politics because that's the best thing that's our advantage over other politicians and other parties and things like that, is that we genuinely are a party of the working class, and we want to hear from the working class. So knocking on doors is like absolutely the most exciting aspect of the opportunity.
What are you hearing? Tell me about a fun conversation you had, or interesting conversation.
I think when it comes down to it, I think the most exciting conversations I've been having have been people who are like asking questions about all of the different examples of so-called socialist candidates that we've been seeing all around.
Right, we're seeing a lot of Democratic Socialists, some of whom are affiliated with Democratic Socialist America, some like AOC, sort of, not with the national, but with the local, some Bernie Sanders, not at all. But they're all working within the Democratic Party. They run in Democratic primaries. What do you tell them about your brand of socialism?
Yeah, I mean, so we start with this. I mean, I always say, like, it's like great that you're excited about a project of building a better world, and like it's wonderful that people are in motion around that goal. And I think that like we want to support the idea of working people actually having a voice in their politics. But when it comes down to it, our vision differs because, we are trying to build something independently of that Democratic Party.
And why is that?
The Democratic Party has for 200 years been fooling workers into thinking that it has their best interests in mind. And the Democratic Party is run by our bosses. We're like, this is the example that I use with people, is like, we are working people, and it would be ridiculous to have a manager at a union meeting, right? Like it doesn't make sense to have somebody who has whose opinions are opposite of yours in your meeting, and whose interests are opposite of yours in your meeting. So why would we have them in our political party? The Democratic Party is not a working class party, as some people believe it is. Maybe some working class people make their way to the top of it, but it is run from top to bottom by the big capitalist elite. They are the problem, and they are, this is their party, and they use it to accomplish their goals. They use it to bomb other countries in the Middle East and in South America. They use it to repress Black and brown populations, and to shut down independent movements of working people, like the all of the powerful climate advocacy that's being done and all this kinds of stuff. I mean, and especially, I mean, from my point of view, the Palestine Solidarity Movement, people think of all that repression and they understand the government has this role in destroying, social movements and things like that. Because we see it. We saw the government intervene to destroy that movement. And that all happened under Biden, right? So the Democratic Party is a party of the elite, and it works for the elite, and it works for their profits and for their best interests. And workers deserve a party of their own. They deserve an independent voice. They deserve a party that is seeking power in the name of working people, working and oppressed people, and is seeking that power and wants a strategy and a program that's aimed at taking that power. And so that's really what we're trying to put forward. We want to fight for a Labor Party. I mean, that's number one. We want to fight for a Labor Party that comes out of a union movement that's fighting and puts forward and puts forward the best interests of working people. And so we're going to keep advocating for that. And when we are at the doors and people want to talk about people like Mamdani, we're very much like, it's great to try to fight for a better world, but those guys are fighting in a party that is run by our bosses. We deserve an independent voice.
So let's talk about the independent voice if it came to Hartford. And does the Workers' Voice have any elected officials in any cities yet?
No, we don't.
And so if you're elected to represent the 11th district, what would be sort of your top issues of what you would tackle as a legislator?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that we've been putting forward is a perspective on the extent to which taxpayers in Connecticut are paying for the war industry. We found that $21.7 billion have been going towards the military. And we could fund so much.
Oh, does that come out of tax revenue, you mean, that we send?
Yeah, it comes out of tax revenue. And so we would,
So that's federal tax revenue.
No, this is for Connecticut.
Right, but what we pay in federal taxes, is that our share of that money? Like, what is that 21.7 billion?
I don't know specifically the numbers, but what I do know is that that money that Connecticut taxpayers could be spending on human need rather than on the profits of the war industry could be going to do all kinds of things. Like we could double the number of teachers. We could, have 20,000 scholarships for students attending four-year college. We could, have 50,000 new jobs and put solar panels on 1.5 million homes. And that's not even the half of it. And we would have billions left over after a process like that. So our big thing is that we want to bring the war dollars home. We want to convert those factories from war production to the production of things that actually benefit humanity, like trains and buses and ventilators and things like that. Rather than
like Sikorsky, where they're building the jet engines. What would you want to do with Sikorsky?
Yeah, we would absolutely say that those, this has to be a process that's managed by the workers in that factory. The workers there would need to decide what they make. But I'd be hard pressed to imagine that they would take the opportunity to make things that destroy human life when they could make things that would benefit them and their families and their communities. So as a
state legislator, would you seek to pass non-binding resolutions about what federal lawmakers would deciding on the budget? Like Rosa DeLauro's in the room and they decide what gets spent with our tax dollars, and there are other legislators all at the federal level decide how much we're going to pay in income tax to the federal government. What would a state legislator be able to do? Would it be sort of use the office to raise consciousness about it and pass non-binding resolutions calling on the elected officials in Congress to do differently? Like, how would you bring those war dollars home as a state legislator?
I mean, the biggest thing that we would have access to as a state legislator would be the ability to support the independent campaigns to actually make these things happen. We know that the government, as it stands right now, currently works for the big businesses and for corporations and the super wealthy. And so that's who the compromises are all going in favor of those people. It doesn't work to compromise with them in that way. Like, we don't want to be a part of this, horse trading to get what we want out of the federal government, which we know is corrupt. So, and the state government, which we know is corrupt, in favor of landlords and bosses. Right.
So what are some things you would do?
So we would actually be a part of the movement in the streets that actually does force that federal government to move on certain issues. Right. Whenever we see, progressive policies of the federal government. It's when working people are in motion trying to fight back against the austerity and the, destruction of our social safety nets and all these kinds of things. The only way that workers have been able to influence that is by fighting in the streets, by building strike action. And what we would do differently from the current politicians is we would actually build that movement, right? Our campaign isn't about turning social movements into an election campaign and into me as a candidate. Our campaign is about using an electoral platform to build a social movement that actually has the power to change the relationship.
So you brought up landlords. Max Cisneros Roman gave you some high fives. Thanks for listening. Mobilize. And Hakeem writes in, how would you pay down debt? I guess we have a lot of pension debt in Connecticut. We have a big federal debt under Trump that's gotten huge. Would you be tackling that issue at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when it comes down to it, it goes back to this question of, these war dollars. Our economy in this state is entirely subsidizing, corporate landlords and the war industry beyond our wildest dreams. If like one of the examples that I'll give is that, we have this para-educator shortage, and people are like, oh, but it costs so much money to hire all these, para-educators. So Lamont puts forward this idea to have a training program, and it's going to cost all this money and on and on and on. And, regular working people across the state are, wondering to themselves, how much is this going to cost and all these kinds of things. But Lamont could pay for it out of his own pocket, right? He could pay for all of the para-educators to get a massive raise, and then it would actually be a job that people can afford to do. One
argument some of the progressive Democrats make is that they should raise taxes on the wealthy. The corporate is 6.99% is the largest tax rate, and now for income tax, there's proposals that Lamont has opposed, but some Democrats have supported. And I think Al Palin might support. I haven't asked him, but I think he does. Which after you make your first million, the rest of it is taxed at 7.5%. And that they thought that would open up. Another big issue is the spending cap. We have rules how if a lot of receipts come in extra 1 year, there's always so much that we can expect because the revenues are volatile, because so much of it comes from very wealthy people in the finance industry who have these wild swings year to year. They want to be able to release more money from that. Have you thought at all, like if you were a state senator, where you would go to those? I mean, a lot of
these questions come down to an individual basis, and I think that that's not really the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is we've got these corporations in the state that are getting handouts, right? We have a massive welfare operation going on for these big corporations that are making billions off of our work and our labor, right? And those corporations are national and international organizations that have, millions of workers. And those are the companies that we think need to be.
So have you thought a particular company or particular tax break they get, state or federal?
The biggest companies that I can think of are like Amazon, right? Like Amazon workers and all these things should have a democratic right to control that organization. We should all the top Fortune, 1,000 companies, should be workers' companies, and they should be under workers' control.
And we're talking to Rosa Pepper-Macias. I say it right, Macias?
Macias, yeah.
Macias. Here is the Workers' Voice Party candidate for State Senate District 11. Any thoughts on public power? That came up in the governor primary about whether we have about, I think it's 7 or 8 municipal power companies in the state in some some red areas that have lower tax rates. They're owned by the municipalities as opposed to Eversource and UI, which are monopolies protected by the government, and they have fewer outages, but it costs a lot of money to start those. They haven't, I think it's been like a century since most of them started up. So there's a big debate where the government should cede municipal power companies or whether we should go for microgrids and sort of geothermal power projects that are smaller in scale. Any thoughts about
I'm so glad you brought it up because I think it's really incredible that our state has this example. Because it's exactly the type of control that we want working people and working and oppressed people to have over their communities, right? We think that we should be able to organize lots of things in that way. We've shown in these places that when public resources are for the benefit of working people, they're organized better and more efficiently and for cheaper. And that's exactly the type of world that I want to try to build, right? I want to have that same type of public control over schools, over, the law enforcement. All these kinds of things should be organized and run for working people's best interests rather than for the profit of one of these companies like Eversource.
Any thoughts about English Station, whether that could be a place for public power array, or what would you like? Because a lot of talk about what should be done with that island.
I mean, people are putting forward making it a park and all these kinds of things. But I think that when it comes down to it, I don't think that I should have any. I think that that's the type of thing that we would say that needs to be decided on by the people, and we want to fight for people to be able to have the right to decide what happens to that place. This is one of those examples of a place that's been destroyed over the course of a long period by these corporations who don't.
Right, we're still fighting with them to clean it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that stuff should be brought under the control of working people.
So in terms of ICE immigration raids and the war in Gaza, how did you brought up those issues? How does state legislator address those issues?
Well, I mean, we live in a state that is very, very important to the war machine. So that's, you're spot on to point to the fighter jet factories and the helicopter factories in this state. We want to support the independent power of the unions that operate in those facilities so that they can have eventually the power to stop this genocide. Right? Their hands are on the...
Do you think that the labor union members would want to do that, or would they want the contracts to keep building the helicopters?
Well, I mean, I think people go to work so that they can sustain their lives.
Yeah.
People aren't going to work because they're, particularly interested in whatever part of a helicopter they're making, right? I mean, it's the same machines people love to use those machines. That's real. I know some of my friends who work in those plants are do like to use those machines, but so I would imagine that those machines could be making other parts. I mean, in fact, I know that those machines can make parts that are part of buses and trains and all these kinds of things. But fundamentally, those workers have more in common with Palestinian workers than they do with the bosses in their factory, right? And the bosses of the entire super corporation that is Sikorsky or Pratt and Whitney. So, I do think that those unions should, and it's embarrassing that they haven't, but fight for that right. Fight for the right to stop production on that basis, that we shouldn't be killing working people across the world because those are members of our class just like us. And, we should be working together with those people to make our world a better place rather than fighting them and dropping bombs on them. Right. So, that's how we see the issue with Palestine. And when it comes down to it, the workers in this state have their hands on the levers, and that is an enormous power. We have an enormous power in this state to affect the war machine and America's ability to do this violence to people abroad. And so we should be absolutely using that power, and we need to be organizing those people to have the confidence to show that we can make what we want. This society should be run by us because we already provide. So it's already run by us.
You'd like to see the weapons manufacturers transition to labor-run civilian industries.
Yeah.
Like mass transit.
Yeah. And so let's get to the question of ICE and all these things. So, it's a great question because people oftentimes ask, especially at the doors, what are you going to do to stop all of these kinds of raids? And when it comes down to it, we think that we need to stop all the raids, all the detentions and all the deportations, but we understand that only a movement of people can stop those. No individual legislator is going to be able to do that. I mean, we've witnessed that the entire government is set up in such a way as to build up these organizations, these law enforcement agencies. The Democratic Party has built up ICE and laid the groundwork for the assault that Trump is waging right now. But we have seen that get walked back. And the example that I'll give is in 2006. Oh. I mean, Minneapolis is a great example, but I think that people forget that in 2006 there was a massive immigrant rights movement. But this memory is still around. You know, I was at an immigrant rights meeting of one of the groups that I've been going to help try to fight back against these attacks on immigrants. And I mentioned this massive immigrant rights upsurge in 2006, and a woman in the room was like, "I remember that. I got my coworkers to go out on strike that day." So what happened was there was these massive protests that were happening in Chicago and New Mexico, in places with large amounts of immigrant communities, and they built a massive general strike that happened on May 1st of 2006. They shut down enormous amounts of production. Goya closed all of its production all across the United States except for Florida. You had it was like half of agriculture in California couldn't run. Like every Burger King was closed. It was just crazy. Retail, meat packing was reduced to half of what it normally is. This is the power that working people have.
New Haven, we had a big fight with the federal government in 2007. We did immigrant-friendly ID cards, and they did sweeps in Fairhaven, and the city government was against the FBI.
I mean, the reason that that progressive government, like local governments like New Haven, had the confidence and the ability to do that kind of stuff was because of the power of this movement that had swept the entire United States. And that was the power of the Day Without Immigrants, right? And so it was an enormous pushback against two bills that were being put forward by the Democrats and the Republicans. They were both awful. The Republican bill would have made helping immigrants in any way a felony, and the Democrat bill was going to create this massive guest worker program, which would have enshrined the legality of second-class citizenship for immigrants.
So what's the goal? Do we want to just have the open border, you think?
Well, I think that the idea that we should be discriminating against anybody for their place of origin is ridiculous, and we need to fight back against that as working people. But I think that like the most important aspect of this question is that what are the ways in which this border, who does this border harm? Right? The rich and the powerful can go wherever they want. They don't care about borders. They can go wherever they want. We think working people should have that right too. So that's the goal, is for people to have the right to travel where they want to travel. And we want a world where people can have work and jobs and food and resources and public transportation and a dignified life wherever they are. And we want that across the world. So, we're not limiting ourselves to building a movement here in the United States. But the way that we're going to be able to fight back against these attacks that are being weaponized against, they say there's this like geographical threat. There's this threat of people coming from somewhere else, right? And it's also, right, like they're not pointing to the threat of somewhere else being Sweden, right? This is a racial threat. We need to throw that off. We don't respect that idea. But it's not. Like, who are the people who are actually stealing from us? Who are the people that are actually exploiting us? It's the wealthy of this country. It is your boss. It is the CEO of the company that you work for and for all the products that you buy. Those are the people who are robbing from us every day. And our labor is being devalued because it's useful to them and it makes them a profit. And so those are the people that we need to fight, not people from another country. Like, that is a ridiculous notion. And as working people, we need to fight back against it. When that idea comes up, it's our job to say, no. Who's our actual enemy and who's actually, stealing from us on a daily basis? And we got to remind our friends about that. We got to remind our coworkers about that, and organize our coworkers to fight back against that. And that's what they did in 2006. They said, no, it's not my neighbor who is stealing my job. It's the corporations which are deciding to offshore my entire industry.
Hakeem asked, if you eliminate the border, where do you think the rest of the world would want to go?
Well, this is a question that we get all the time. And I think that when it comes down to it, the borders that they set up are permeable to them, and they are not permeable to us. We think that people should have the right to travel wherever they want to travel to, and I can say, with certainty that as working people, we don't have that right now. Like, it's, as a trans person, it's very clear that I don't have the ability to travel. Like, I mean, my right to travel has been walked back since, in the last year.
Meaning when they said that you can't have a visa that says one gender, that you have to gender your birth, or...
Well, just that, I mean, all across the United States, people have been denied their identification when they've changed it.
Yeah, about Kansas
people have
yesterday.
people have been stopped at the border for mismatching identification and all these things. People say that trans people are doing identity theft, and all of those things are attacks on our class. They limit our mobility so that we can't organize and fight with one another, and they also weaponize using like labor, using the threat of offshoring our labor and sending our labor to places where they don't have strong unions as a threat against us, and we should be able to travel to do that.
Let me ask you about AI. So the legislatures are wrestling with, do you put rules down? Do you have more terms on data centers? Do you have rules against deep fakes, against slop? Any thoughts on yours about what you would do as state legislator on AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we need to stop the construction of data centers right now. I mean, I think that all the data centers and all the AI companies need to be brought under workers' control. Bernie put forward this thing about having a 50% share. We think we should have 100% share, a public ownership of AI companies and all of these types of things.
But you want to shut them down. You would continue with the development of AI?
Well, I mean, I think to a certain extent, a lot of these things, a lot of AI, from the current vantage point, there's not a lot going for AI. There's a few places where we can kind of see the efficacy of it. Schools are not one of those places, really. But I think that technologies should continue to be developed and all these kinds of things, and we should see where this stuff goes. But right now, we haven't seen what it looks like for AI to be controlled by working people. We've only seen them use it to try to destroy our jobs and our ability to get jobs and our ability to have skilled positions in those jobs, right? They're developing AI to de-skill our labor. It's a technology that is supposed to save them money on labor. And we don't want AI to save money on labor. We want AI to actually benefit humans. And so if it can benefit humans, then yeah, it can stay. But if it can't, then we got to dispense with it. But we won't know that until it's brought under workers' control and workers can decide whether or not it is useful. I mean, there are examples of, technologies. We think about something called the reverse centaur model, right? Like a normal centaur is like a horse body, which is sort of the machine, and then a human on top of that, a human torso to decide how it all functions. So we want machines that assist humans, not humans that assist machines. We don't want a therapist to be checking 10 AI chatbots and struggling to make sure that those chatbots aren't making grievous mistakes, which they are. We want, a worker, a therapist or whatever, to have access to the tools that will make their job easier, and not increase their workload tenfold, just because whatever. So, I mean, that's sort of our thoughts on AI. I think that the big thing, though, is that, they're developing all kinds of terrifying things. They want to put mini nuclear reactors all around the state so that to power their AI machines and all these kinds of things. And, those AI machines are terrible for working class neighborhoods, and all of those kinds of things are awful. So we need to stop that right now. We have enough AI. We can handle it from here. We just need it to be brought under workers' control.
Tell me about the district. So it includes the center town, downtown, East Rock, Fairhaven, Whitneyville, Annex Heights, Bishop Woods, Morris Cove. Do you see any differences in the district about the kind of issues you deal in those different neighborhoods, or particular neighborhoods you like? Or
I mean, it's been a real pleasure to get to walk around all these areas in the district. I spent a lot of time in the district, but obviously, you've got different types of populations in each area that are focused more on certain issues over others. But what's been striking is the extent to which people are united on the things that are most important to them. It's very clear that in this country, working people are under attack right now. People feel it from the attacks on immigrants to the destruction of the climate. And it's really clear with the war in Iran and the attacks on Cuba and on Palestine and on Venezuela that our government is more interested in destroying working people's lives all around the globe.
And as running for state senator, how are you advancing the fight to reverse that?
The war?
All of these issues.
Yeah.
Attacks.
So, we want to build a campaign that actually builds up the power of those social movements. We want a campaign that is giving people the confidence and the program and the vision for a world that doesn't need those things to make a profit. We want to eliminate that motivation that they have for prosecuting these wars. We want human need to come before any other thing.
And how will you measure success in terms of a campaign? If you win the office, if you get certain issues, advise certain...
Yeah, I mean, I like to say that we have a different win condition than they do. They are fighting for a seat, and we're fighting for, number one, the right to just participate in these elections and to show that, socialism is not some, extraordinary ideology. It's a program that benefits working people, and it works for working people, and most working people agree with the ideas that we put forward, that, we shouldn't be going to war, that we should be, spending money on human need and not for the profits of the billionaires, that there should be enough housing and that people shouldn't be on the street, that, we shouldn't have, racism and white supremacy. And you see it because, so many people never voted in the last elections. And these elections were billed as the most important elections of our lives. But the vast majority of people in this country were somewhat apathetic. I mean, it's remarkable to me the extent to which we imagine that that all of these policies that are put forward by the Democrats and the Republicans are going to actually solve our problems. These policies are make-believe. They present solutions to problems that aren't the most pressing issues. We need to stop this war. We're spending billions on a war that is purely for the imperialist drive to fight its rival in China. They're worried about China, so they're going to war. It's ridiculous to spend money on a training program for paras when we could just pay the paras more and have many more paras that way, right? There's all of these make-believe
as opposed
solutions.
to training for teachers' positions, you mean?
No, I mean, seriously, the way of keeping more paras in the business is by paying them more. And, paras can't work for, they're making essentially less than minimum wage because they're only working a certain fraction of the year. And they make, pennies on the dollar when it comes to, how much they would be paid if they were working in the war industry, right? So it's in order to get more paras, we have to pay the paras more.
And Rosa, how do people find out about your campaign? I'm sorry,
well, absolutely, you should follow the Instagram. Like, comment, subscribe.
What's the Instagram account called?
It's Rosa for CT State Senate.
All right.
And then our party is Workers Voice CT on Instagram. We also have a website, voteworkersvoice.net. And Workers Voice US is our our newspaper and our website where you can find out more about our party and about the types of campaigns that we are doing. On our website on voteworkersvoice.org, or I think it might be .net. Wait, actually, I can check now.
We'll find it. Just got to Google it. Well, thanks. It was really nice hearing about your journey and what you're up to in this campaign, and I wish you luck on the trail.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming in on Dateline New Haven. Thanks to Harry Jost behind the control and the people who sent in the questions. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It'd Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day, all night, and all weekend long at WNHH New Haven's home for community radio.